Good morning, equity agents. Welcome to this week's Tuesday Talk.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us again.
All right.
So today we are going to talk about transaction broker relationships and how to maintain neutrality. Whether you're working with a buyer, whether you're working with a seller, whether you're working with the buyer and the seller, I think there's a lot of gray, or we feel like there's a lot of gray. What am I able to say?
Yes, there's not a lot of gray.
We feel like there's a lot of gray.
Yes.
What can I say? What can I do if I'm not advocating for one party over another? And Dora actually has a pretty strong position on that as well.
To start with, we know the different types of relationships that we can have here. And if you attended my mandatory update last week, the state has kind of revised some definitions. So we have consumers. A consumer is someone who is interested in real estate and may need the help of a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how they need it. We don't know what kind of relationship, but that's a consumer. Yep. They don't have a relationship of any sort, but they may need one. Then we have a customer. So we're going to kind of go up the hierarchy of relationships. A customer is somebody who works with a licensed real estate person, but is not being represented. There's no fiduciary duties. There's no transaction broker duties. You always owe fair and honest dealings to anyone, but there's no relationship. So that's a customer.
Yeah, that's the person that says, I don't want to sign anything.
Yeah, I'm not signing. Beyond that.
That's true. Beyond that.
I am signing or being disclosed that I'm a customer, but I want to represent myself. I'm representing me. You represent somebody else, and you can represent that other person as a transaction broker or as an agent. But customer, I don't want representation.
Hands off.
Then we have transaction broker, and that is when you are representing the transaction. You're not owing that person fiduciary duties or advocacy, but you're assisting in the transaction, providing guidance, but not direct.
Think of yourself as a facilitator.
Yeah.
You're facilitating.
Yeah, you're helping.
Yeah, you're helping.
And anything you know about the property, or you should know about the property, you pass between everybody, the transaction person that you're working for. You would advise them to get a home inspection, to get an appraisal, things to look out for in a title report. So things that have to do with the property, you're advising them. Now, if you know anything about the other party to the transaction, you know anything about the seller or the buyer, depending on what side you're on, you don't relay that. You don't say, hey, they're going through a divorce and they'd be willing to sell more. Or the buyer, you want to say, hey, he's got more money. You're a transaction broker and you're just kind of in the middle, neutral.
Not sharing secrets of either party, unless it pertains to material facts about the home.
Yeah, anything that's going to give somebody a leverage against someone else. You talk about the house, and the house only. Then we have agency.
Seller agent, buyer agent.
And that definitely, you have your fiduciary duties. You have, you're an advocate. If I'm working for the seller as an agent, anything I can learn about that buyer that might help my seller get a better price or a better contract, I'm going to tell them.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to try and pry out of that other agent, how excited are they? What's their time frame? Maybe they sold a house and they have to buy. And they're in a hurry. That's going to show motivation for that buyer to maybe pay a little higher price. Conversely, if I'm a buyer's agent and not working with the seller, well,
what can we learn about the seller?
If I see that there's no clothes in the closet anymore, maybe they've moved out, it's a relocation, there's a divorce, or I hear that they've already got an offer on another property, I'm going to try and use that to the buyer's advantage. So that's agency. You're advocating for that client. Transaction broker. This is where we get confused on a double-ended transaction when we're a transaction broker for the buyer and a transaction broker for the seller. This is where you've really got to be neutral and know that you are not advocating. You're not on anyone's side. You're trying to bring both parties together and let them negotiate. Let them come to terms. You guide, make sure that they have a home inspection. Make sure that if they need a CMA, you can run numbers for them and do a CMA.
That's probably the number one question that I get when an agent's working as a transaction broker because it's their listing and an unrepresented buyer comes in. And that's the number one thing I get is the buyer asks me for a CMA. Can I do that for them? And absolutely. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
That's public record. That's if the buyer says, what should I offer? Well, you can't do that, but they can look at the numbers and they can make a judgment call based upon the comps. Absolutely. So yeah, that's a huge question I get a lot.
There you go.
It's a great question.
Definitely do a CMA. You can give information. You just don't want to be giving your opinion or using anything that you learn about the other party against the other party. You're working in the middle. So this came up in our mandatory update about can you be a transaction broker for a family member.
A family member.
Okay, says we're back. Okay.
So we're back. So let's go back to the law.
So back to the law. If you have a financial interest in this transaction, you cannot be a transaction broker because we'll make it as easy as possible. I'm the buyer, let's say. There's no way that if I learn something about that seller, it's my listing, then I'm not going to use that in my benefit. I am going to definitely use that in my benefit.
You're going to look out for yourself.
I've got that listing. There's no way I can treat him as an agent. He's going to have to be a customer. Or if I'm the seller and a buyer comes,
you can't represent that buyer.
I can't represent that buyer as a transaction broker because remember, a transaction broker in the middle. Anything I learn about them, I'm not going to use it. It's my property. I'm going to use it against them. So if it's my transaction, whoever is on the other end is a customer. If I have a financial interest in it, whoever's on the other side is a customer. So that's the law. And that's why we write in there that I am a licensed agent. We have to disclose that. That has to do with Rule E25, I believe, is what the law states. Now, the Real Estate Commission comes up with these positions. So these are thoughts where they're like, you know what, you might want to watch out for these things that could occur, and this is how we might want you to do it. Again, this is not law, and if you read the commission statement, I'm going to actually read it to you. It actually, at the end of the day, says, check with your broker.
It does. Check with your supervisory broker.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm letting you guys know how I feel.
How our position is.
So I'm going to read this to you. It's not that fun when I have to read stuff, but I'm going to do that.
We're going to do it because it's beneficial.
So this is commission position on acting as a transaction broker or an agent in particular types of transactions. The public may enter into either a TB relationship or an agency relationship. We know that. The difference between agency and transaction brokerage is an agent is an advocate with fiduciary duties, and transaction brokers should remain neutral. Just talked about that. However, in some situations, the relationship of the broker of a particular party or property may make a particular relationship inappropriate or problematic.
Problematic.
I'm thinking problematic. Before acting as a TB in a transaction where neutrality is difficult, the broker should consider whether the TB arrangement is suitable. Consult with the broker's supervising broker and make the necessary disclosures. That's me. So, selling or purchasing for one's own account, whether the property is solely or partially owned to be acquired by the broker. See Rule E25. I got that right.
Yep.
Regarding proper disclosure.
So yeah, that has to do with when you're buying or selling.
So yeah, you're buying or selling.
Buying or selling.
You got to disclose that you're a licensed real estate agent in the state of Colorado.
Yep.
And you cannot treat the other person as anything other than a customer. Because there's no way that you can learn something from them and not use that against them.
Yep.
So,
and know that this doesn't apply when a buyer comes with a buyer's agent. This is only when
Yes.
someone comes unrepresented. So
this is unrepresented.
Yeah.
This is when you want to represent both parties.
Yes.
So, your deal or you have financial interest in it, you disclose that you have financial interest and that other person is treated as a customer. This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
So, how about a spouse or family member? Well, spouse, you probably have a financial interest, even if you're not on the deed. Let's say it's Stacy and I, and let's say she owned a property before we got married, and she's the only one on that. I still have a financial interest that she does well.
Yeah.
So I would disclose that again and say anyone that we would work with on the other side would be a customer. Now, family member.
Family member. Mm-hmm.
This is where it can get tricky. So we're going to break it down even further than family member. We're going to go all the way down here to what if it's a family member or a friend or a client that you've worked with.
Client.
Yeah, a client that you work with a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What they say in here is selling or purchasing for a repeat or regular client, family member, on and on. Undertaking as a transaction broker the listing of multiple units or lots or properties. So somebody that you've worked with a lot.
Regularly.
Yeah. Can you have neutral feelings with that person? Can you be in the center? So again, transaction broker is someone you're in the middle. If it's your best friend, do you have the ability to, we're going to say that your best friend's the seller, and a buyer comes along, do you have the ability to work with that buyer in a neutral manner and not go to your friend and say, oh, you know what? I think this guy, can you be in the middle?
Can you filter appropriately?
Can you filter? So the Real Estate Commission kind of says, we're not sure if you can.
Yeah.
Personally, I would hope that you can.
I think it's an individual basis.
It is an individual basis. If for some reason you can't, you
Don't
can't.
do it.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
But we are licensed professionals. And it is our duty, our legal obligation to treat people neutrally in a transaction relationship. And I kind of think of like an attorney. Attorneys take on cases where sometimes they're probably thinking, I don't think this guy is in the right. But you know what? It's their job, it's their duty, it's their license that says I'm going to represent that person to the best of my ability. That is the oath that they have taken on. Now, we have not taken on an oath. But we are licensed professionals. We have taken on a license law. And I think most of the time, most agents can play neutral. Mm-hmm. And this is how I say you play neutral. And if you think about it, have you ever had someone tell you, I won't pay $1 more than X? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pay more than $300,000. Not a bit. Well, I disclosed they're not going to pay it. Not $1 more. Well, what if I went to that person and said, what if it was $300,000 and $100? That person, of course,
I'll pay
that's that. Silly. I wasn't being that. Well, how about $300,000, $1,000? So what I'm getting at is when people tell you something, you don't really know what they're telling you. So for me to use something that I think might help someone else, I might be doing a disservice on some occasions. Mm-hmm. Because people don't always tell you the truth. So sometimes it's actually easier to be a transaction broker where you don't have to tell things between the parties what you think or don't think they may or may not do. I have no trouble being a transaction broker for a good friend, for a family member that I don't have a financial interest in. I can do it easily, and I can tell people the benefit. I feel good about it. I'm going to be here guiding you, making sure that it's going to be a smooth transaction, making sure you're doing the right things, getting you the information for you to make a wise decision. I'll put a CMA together for the seller. I'll put a CMA together for the buyer. Let them come together and figure out what works for them best. So I think you can do it. But if you can't, if you're like, oh my God, this has been my long friend since high school, I'm going to look out for her no matter what. You can't be a transaction broker.
Yeah.
You're going to have to treat that other person as a customer. So the law, again, states financial interest, but at all times you must be doing your relationship that you've said you're going to do. If you say you're going to be a transaction broker, you've got to live up to those obligations. And if you can't do it, then you can't take on that type of relationship. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Yeah, and I think one of the easiest one is when you're working with a family member, and that's where it gets really, really hard to maintain the neutrality, because it's your listing, and let's say your brother wants to buy a property. He says, you know what, I just noticed you listed that. Take me over. Should be easy for you to get us in. And he says, so why are they selling? And you say, I haven't been given permission to disclose that. And the brother says, you mean you're not going to tell me? I'm your own brother. You are siding with the seller? And he puts pressure on you. And it's not that you're siding with the seller. It's that the seller didn't give you permission to disclose any of their motivation or why they're selling. And you say, no, sorry, brother. I can't tell you that information. Let's look at the house.
Yeah. And sometimes I just don't know. I don't know that information. I don't know. That's not my job. My job is to get you the information about the property itself and let you make wise decisions, because I don't want to kill the deal by giving you misinformation about what I think and don't think. Yeah. So, Jennifer, you said, can you be a TB on your own property? I'm hoping after all this, that question was answered.
Yeah, unless she jumped in a little bit late. No, you cannot.
You can't. You cannot.
You cannot maintain neutrality when you are the seller or the buyer.
Yeah, can't happen. So, other questions. I think we covered. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, we overthink it.
Yeah, we overthink it. Yeah. The main thing is, can you be neutral, or would you use anything you learned about that other person against them for your benefit or for someone else's benefit? If you're going to use it for someone else's benefit, you're not a transaction broker. You're being an agent for somebody. Mm-hmm. And if you're an agent for somebody, you can't be a transaction broker for the other person.
Yeah.
You got to be a customer.
And then, of course, feel free to email us privately or post in the comments any other subjects that you would like us to bring. We're more than happy to arm you with the education you need.
All right.
Thanks, you guys so much for joining.
Have a great rest of your week.
Next Tuesday.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.